Tonight we're looking at campaigning in a time of COVID. There is widespread speculation that South Africa will move to a lower lockdown level soon. But even then, there are likely to be restrictions on gatherings when political parties will be chomping at the bit to rally their supporters ahead of the local government elections that are now scheduled for November the 1st. To discuss, we're joined by a political analyst, Prof Tinyiko Maluleke. Professor, thank you for being with us as always. Firstly, isn't it a given that some party or some of the parties will break lockdown regulations? If it's not the ANC, then there could be a scandal if the ANC-led government cracks down on that too hard. Do you think this is going to be a tough period?
It's going to be very tough, Francis. It's of course, new territory. We've never been here before. My sense is that political parties will have to be very creative, much more creative than they usually have been, especially to campaign in those areas where people will not have the ways and means to be reached electronically or online, but actually are used to seeing actual human beings coming to talk to them. So smaller groups of campaigners will have to be created, more door-to-door perhaps being done, more use of cell phones, etc. So it's going to be quite tough, even if the rules are somewhat relaxed a little bit. What we must remember, Francis, is that this is really about the right to vote. The Constitution doesn't speak about the right of political parties to campaign, but it speaks about the right to vote. It is a very important right. And to the extent that political parties may not be able to campaign properly, it could infringe on the voters' right to vote. And that is really what has to be protected, the right to vote.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what can be done? What has been done internationally? People are asking why we're not having television debates, for example. But then, of course, it's always a little bit tricky if you're the big dominant party like the ANC, debating with smaller parties. But do you think we should be going there? How can parties be clever about this?
Sure. It's difficult to think of all the ways. Of course, television debates we have always used before. But, you know, our television debates were just a conduit for the town hall meetings, really. So how do you have viable and effective television debates without the town hall setting in the background? It becomes very, very difficult. But it certainly is something that we have to explore using television and radio a lot more creatively than we have done before, instead of using them merely as props for actual meetings in town halls and actual meetings in the streets of residences. So we will have to do that. Of course, you know, not every South African have access to television also. And not every South African, even though quite a lot do, have access to cell phones. But not everyone does have access to cell phones. The elderly may not even know how to use these things. So we will have to look for creative ways to reach out to them.
And of course, this is at a time when some of the funding for the parties has dried up if they're trying to think innovatively. And let's end with that, the political party funding bill. I mean, incredibly, the EFF said it did not receive any donations above 100,000 Rand. The ANC and the DA declared, but maybe the funding has dried up. What have you learned now that the veil has been lifted in that regard on the funding?
It's quite amazing that out of more than 100 political parties, only 2 have declared. It's quite unlikely that only 2 have received donations above 100,000. But be that as it may, we have to believe what they tell us. I do think that the administration of funding above 100,000 is also going to be very difficult. for smaller parties to administer. And that may be part of the reason we are where we are. But knowing South Africans, I think this 100,000 cut-off point is going to be creatively appropriated so that parties are going to receive a lot of 99,000 donations or 95,000 donations multiplied several times over. So, and I don't know what happens then. I mean, anything to avoid having to declare or to account for money received, I think will be attempted by most political parties.
Yeah. Yeah, the IEC earlier saying it is having to work within the framework of the law, which says you don't have to declare below 100,000. But yes, will it turn out to be a huge loophole? Thank you very much, political analyst Professor Tinyiko Maluleke.